Well, ladies and gentlemen, demons, druids, and dark magic. Our guest Beth Webb is going to give us a talk.
Good morning. As David said, I'm Beth Webb, and I write lots of rather strange books. But most of my life, I have been working as, I suppose you'd call it a communications psychologist. I've been working for an organisation called Books Beyond Words, and they do wordless books for adults with learning disabilities or people who've got problems with reading, explaining difficult life situations. So my whole life I've been wrapped up in psychology. And so when I started writing my books about the late Iron Age and the Roman invasion, I obviously started from a psychological point of view. And these books are called the Star Dancer Quartet. I shall wave them at you and direct you to the market stall in the room next door. I started writing them to see how far traditional magic could be explained by psychology, but without employing unseen powers. I didn't think powers were necessary to create dramatic effects. Okay, I was being prissy about magic. It wasn't I didn't believe in magic, but it's this thing about Arthur C. Clarke explaining that magic is science we don't understand yet. I also wanted to make the books as historically accurate as possible, using archaeology when history wasn't available. And I wanted to make the reader see things through the eyes of an Iron Age person. Now, Star Dancer, this one, opens as the Romans invade Britain, roughly 43 CE. Now, one night, the Druids see a meteorite shower, and they interpret it as the stars are dancing. It's an unusual time of year. It's early February. And they believe a child born that night will be exceptionally strong, both as a Druid and a war leader, and they will avert a great evil, which they believe, quite logically, to be the Romans and their invasion. Now, a girl, Tegan, is born that night, when the meteorite shower is at its height. But as dawn comes and the meteorite shower fades, a boy is born, and he's called Griff, but he has Down syndrome. So in the Druid's eyes, neither of these could really be the Star Dancer. Although there is evidence that women were Druids and warriors, and in fact there was quite a famous school for warriors, I believe in Scotland, run by two women. There is evidence for it, which I think is fascinating. I must write their story one day. But Griff, having Down syndrome, would never be quite big enough or strong enough or clever enough. What the Druids were looking for was a sort of mixture of Goliath and Gandalf. You know, somebody big and strong but can do magic as well. Now, as the book progresses, Tegan finds a totem. Now, a totem is like a good luck charm or something that gives you power. Like we know that Vicky becomes an absolutely super knitter because she's dressed as the TARDIS. You know, it gives you extra powers, doesn't it, Vicky? Yes, definitely. But she finds she's given this totem, this green silk shawl, which she believes empowers her. In reality, she's just learned to watch, listen, meditate, understand, and to appreciate the power of storytelling, whether in dance or music or word, the power of storytelling to change things. And these skills are consolidated in her creative response, which is dancing. Now, it's well known that if you feel relaxed, things do work better. Your abilities shine. So far, so good. Now, all sorts of strange, magical things happen to Tegan and Griff, who, like many people with learning disabilities, cannot tell a lie. and who often sees the truth when others can't. But most of these events are explainable to a modern reader's thinking. For example, the climax of the story comes when the baddie, Derwin, who is a bitter-minded old witch, decides to destroy Tegan. Now, Tegan has a mentor called Gilda, who is lovely, but she is very, very ill. And Derwin gives Tegan some medicine, but it's actually poison, making sure that she actually kills her mentor. And sorry, this lost my place. So once the Lady Gilda is dead, Derwin accuses Tegan of murder and tells the villagers that what's worse, Tegan has also raised a demon in the local caves. Now the story builds with heavy rain in the background. In reality, Derwin knows that the downpours will cause the caves to flood, and she's timed it so Gilda's cave funeral, because the Druids did put their dead in caves quite often, and this is based on Wookey Hole caves, by the way, in Somerset, and they have found skeletons there. So she knows the downpours will cause the caves to flood, and she's timed it so Gilda's funeral will coincide with the flooding. And she does all this to prove that the demon is approaching. You know, the demon is angry, and so the floods will come to punish us. And I did actually cheat here by added a not impossible small earthquake, just to add a bit of tension. Now, to Derwin, who doesn't really believe in magic but knows how to manipulate people, it's all just very convenient special effects. She's seen these floods before and believes their swirling waters will only be brief. They can rise up, they'll swirl, they'll be deadly, and then she can stand there and make a show of subduing the waters and show her power, but then she is caught in a whirlpool and drowns. It's left to Tegan to use her powers, but another baddie, Gorgons, a druid, has stolen her magic shawl, which of course crushes her confidence. In desperation to stop the flooding because people are dying, Tegan does dance even without her shawl. The waters drain away and the day is saved, but I leave readers to work out whether it's lucky timing or was there a real demon and did Tegan have powers? Yes, I was being a bit prissy about magic, but the book was bought by Macmillan for a huge amount of money. The reviews were excellent, and so maybe my plan had worked. Let me read to you how Derwin takes Gorgons, a druid who hates Tegan, into the caves to convince him is real. Now, I wrote this scene after doing some actual sound experiments in Wookey Hole caves, and the audio-visual effects do really work. Imagine you're deep under the Mendip Hills in a dark, damp cave. Derwin started to unpack. First, there came a skull, a short tallow candle, a bowl, and the bloodied statue of the goddess she had worn the day they had taken their oath. She beckoned to Gorgons to bring the torch closer. Then she lit the candle and put it inside the skull, so a sickly, smoky light gleamed out from the eye sockets. Getting to her feet, Derwin stretched herself tall, held her hands out wide to the darkness. Gorgons held the torch with shaking hands. The guttering flames spat and sent fragmented shadows across the cavern. Derwin rolled her eyes so only the white showed, and she began to chant, Thumba timber ifrem hashik to estafik dwyer nomprum nomperim. Her face fell flat. Her jowl shook as the ghastly sound spilled out of her, echoing and re-echoing, building to a cacophony of discordant noises, layer upon layer of horror. The sound shredded and tore at Gorgon's soul until he could bear it no longer. He dropped the torch, went out immediately. At the same moment, the candle inside the skull died, plunging the whole cave into absolute darkness. On and on went Derwin's chanting. on her song echoed and jarred. Then slowly images and shapes wound out of the dark. Lightless colours of blood and death and fear, eyes and talons, tentacles and wide swallowing jaws. More and more filled the chamber, each one a manifestation of the horrific sounds issuing from Derwent's mouth. "It's the demon," Gorgon sobbed as the keening swelled into a cry of unfillable emptiness. He collapsed shuddering to the floor, uselessly hiding his head under his cloak. Even there in the dark, even there, the dark lights hurt his eyes. And there was silence and laughter. Not Derwent's, not Gorgon's, but the sound of a cold mirth that faded slowly away into the stillness of the rocks and the dripping of the water. Now, when it came to writing Fire Dreamer, book 2, my editor at Macmillan said she wanted more magic. Now, in this series, as well as telling Tegan's story of coming into her full powers to avert a great evil, I was exploring the 4 elements revered by the ancient people, one book at a time. Book 1 had been air, fire was book 2, water and stone, book 3 and 4. So to please my editor, I decided it was time Tegan learnt to scry, which means, as you all know, seeing patterns in flames and imbuing them with meaning, which, again, is the psychology of pattern recognition and creation. So I built on this so Tegan could also light and throw fire. I kidded myself, I hadn't betrayed my principles, as teenagers often feel like throwing fire, amongst other things, because they get so angry with the world around them. Fire Dreamer had become an extended, visualised metaphor. I was probably trying too hard, but never mind. But I was loosening up. I allowed the demon to become real, and for the book's baddie, Admidius, to sell his soul to it. Oh, and the evil witch, Derwent, from the last book, becomes reincarnated as a raven in this book to act as his familiar, stalking Tegan and spying on her from the air. One of the main plot threads of Fire Dreamer was when Admidius, who was pro-Roman, murdered a tribal king, Isa, who wanted to get rid of the invaders. Now, I have a good friend who's a crime scene manager for Avon and Somerset Police. And I'll never forget his face when I asked him, "How do you solve a crime committed by magic?" But he very kindly helped me. We worked on the book. And magic in the sense of unseen powers was definitely rising and building a whole new reality. And the implications of Tegan mastering fire grew. Huval leaned towards Tegan. "You know about following a spiral path to your innermost self?" "Yes." "Well, this spiral is real, made of fire. As Isa went to Tir na Nog through the flames, you must go the same way. Find Isa's spirit and ask him how he died." The roundhouse fell silent. You want me to go to Tir na Nog through fire?" Tegan whispered. I don't like using fire for divining." "When you were a child," Huval replied, "you ran with the wind in your hair." He smiled. "You were a natural bard. Air was your element. Now you are growing. You mustn't fear any of the elements. Fire is next." Tegan raised her eyes, took a deep breath, and described the vision she had seen of a bone in the fire. "I'll have nothing to do with Admidius's magic," she said. "It's wrong." Huval rubbed his chin and then said, "Have you ever met the goldsmith, Goban?" "Yes, he talked to me about fire once." "And what did he tell you?" Tegan allowed her gaze to rest on the red embers on the path. Goban's words came back to her as clearly as if he'd just spoken them. "Iron is hard earth blood. Fire plucks it from stone, and fire can send it back. If you ever need an answer, look for it in fire. And remember, fire protects from magic, but it also leads you into the deepest part of a mystery. Fire will lead you to your innermost soul and bring you out into the world again. Fire creates and destroys, cleanses and leaves soot. What you put into a furnace and how long you leave it there will determine what comes out, be it gold, charcoal, or bone ash. But be careful. Always use fire to drive shadows away, never to summon them. So, Tegan walks through the fire spiral into Tir na Nog and asks the dead king's spirit what happened, how he died. In reply, she sees visions and hears voices. Now, me being me, obviously I was using suggestion plus the effects of low oxygen on her brain. But the idea that Tegan was actually crossing between the worlds of life and death were becoming very real to me. The magic was working on me. As Huvel had explained to Tegan, metaphors had to be left behind and magic had to be allowed to become real. While I was writing Book 3, Wave Hunter, everything changed. Macmillan cancelled my contract because, despite the great reviews, they weren't selling. Lots and lots of reasons, which I'm happy to talk about it, but they paid me all the money for all 4 books. But because my writing wasn't the problem. Probably marketing was the main problem, that and the 2008 recession. So I was left high and dry and livid. And it's amazing what a few emotions can do to a spell. I took a deep breath. In Wave Hunter, Tegan's demon stalks her. She meets ancient deities, shapeshifts, falls in love, but has to reject her beloved, throws spells at advancing armies, and summons weather magic so strong she almost rips the clouds out of the sky. I see this as Tegan's coming-of-age book. At the end, she takes on the white of a full druid. I had stopped being too damn careful and let rip. I'm certain the work was better for it. I immersed myself in ancient legends and dropped Tegan right in the middle of them all. Now, Wave Hunter starts with Tegan breaking Gobern's very, very important rule to only use fire to drive shadows away, never to summon them. She's so determined to find out who or what was following her, she scries with fire to identify her nemesis. But at the same time, she opens the door to Tir na Nog. The demon smells her spirit, but it has no hands or feet to follow or capture her. So it borrows the body of an injured bear to track Tegan across the wild, misty mountains of Wales in winter. By now I realised if I was going to indulge in real magic, it must have cost and balance, as Ursula Le Guin and the wonderful Terry Pratchett both taught. Tegan and her companion, Kieran, are chased by a possessed bear towards the stronghold of Beira in the Welsh mountains. Tegan is scared. She reacts to fear. She doesn't stop to think before using magic, and this almost costs them their lives. Safe at last in Beira, the old druid, Goronu, has been countering Tegan's reckless spells. Listen, watch, he says. Know what kind of magic is needed before you start flinging spells around. Demons aren't subject to mere spells. They're older than magic. They may be bound for a short while, but you must discover this one's name and meaning before you have any power over it. Tegan learns that the knee-jerk lashing out in fury as a response to something bad isn't always the best solution. Any spell I cast, she realizes, has to take power from somewhere, and that will affect everything. Magic isn't something I just make happen. The world is like a great piece of weaving. Every thread affects the whole. If I make a twist, the other end will pucker. While Tegan stays in Bearda, it is midwinter. She makes friends with an ovate, which is the middle stage of druidry, Enid. And Enid is about to become a full druid. And as part of her initiation, she acts out the ancient Celtic ritual of the death of the Mabon and spends 2 midwinter nights alone in a tiny stone cave, trying to keep the fire of life alive. Alone and in the bitter dark, the demon finds, infects, and sends her mad. And while trying to protect Enid, Gronw challenges Tegan to understand the interconnectedness of magic. Think, child, he snapped, cast your mind back to the finest spells that you've ever known, whether made with love or magic. Both, I suppose. But without any emotions, they wouldn't have worked at all. Love or hate is what fuels magic. Now, when I wrote that, I realized it was vital to my writing and what happens next in my book. Tegan is sent to Ireland on a mission to search for the wave that will heal the land. And there, in the sacred capital of Tara, she falls in love with Tom, the youngest son of the High King. Queen Etienne is a benign but not always wise witch, and she uses a dark mirror. Tegan finds it and looks into it. And in it, she sees the demon. Tegan sensed it had also caught sight of her. It knew where she was. But worse than that, it whispered words that had formed themselves into ideas, and she understood at last why it wanted her. To use her magic to bring chaos to the human world and to drain it of all sense. Tegan has foreseen that if she and Tom marry, he will die. She tells him the truth about herself and how she is in a hurry to go to Ynys Môn, which is Anglesey, where you probably know the Druids probably had a sort of college or a centre of learning just about the time the Romans invaded. She believes she has to go there to help create a great spell that will get rid of the Romans, for she was born to avert a great evil. She has a mission from the goddess Brigid to find the wave that will heal the land. So she begs Tom not to come and promises to return to Ireland once the spell is made and Britain is safe. But Tom adores Tegan and follows her. They arrive in time to witness the battle, the slaughter of the Druids, AD 63. Yes, thank you. They witness the battle, but they're too late to do anything. They travel inland with a few surviving Druids to where gold, silver, tin, and lead all flow from the earth, which I'm sure you know is Alderley Edge, a very magical place. Now there, the leader of their little collective of Druids, possibly some of the last alive in the land, declares that as it's the festival of Luchsna, harvest festival, they must make a great sacrifice to the land to feed it so it can spring afresh with new hope and growth next year. Now, Tegan has seen Goban, the smith god, sacrifice himself and come alive again, but Goban is not here. And this time, it's not a god, it must be a human, one of the few remaining Druids. Tegan is livid. Good people are needed to heal the land, and killing one of the few who understands healing and hope won't solve anything. She rages, then realizes maybe the sacrifice will be her. Maybe this is how she must avert the evil. But when the lots are drawn, it's not her. It's her beloved Tom. And he reveals that his name in ancient Irish means wave. She has brought him here to his pointless death, the wave who will heal the land. Her rage and grief overwhelm her, and she's already learned that the demon's name is vengeance, but she doesn't care. She just wants all the killing and grief to stop, whatever the cost, and why not use vengeance? In Stonekeeper, Book 4, Tegan is bitter, pregnant, widowed and alone. Against her wishes, she's sent to become Boudica's battle druid. She is angry and decides that a time of stone, which in old Celtic thinking means winter and death, this could actually be a good thing. Wipe all the warriors out and leave the non-warriors in the land to build up, repopulate, and let the land heal itself. And the demon agrees. Before the end, it swore, she will call to the gates of Tir na Nog, begging for power to contain the horrors I will unleash. The cost will be exquisite. Her compassion for humans will compel her to agree to my terms. Her obedience will bring the time of stone to the world. A winter of death, emptiness, fear, with no spring to follow. The demon did not care which pieces won the coming battle. Victory was simply a lull between cycles of mayhem, slaughter, hatred, revenge. And soon the star dancer would become the demon's own hands and feet, bringing all to pass. The demon says, I am the one who longs to see you become the most magnificent druid this land has ever known. I will give you the power to contain all the horrors that are rising on a great tide on all sides. You will be the saviour. And what is your price? She asks. Nothing. You have merely to ask. Tegan imagined herself on a beach, arms raised towards the water. Go back, she commanded. This land is sacred. And the sea obeyed. But the waves were made of blood. Ton's blood. He was the strong wave that was meant to heal the land. In her mind she saw his kind eyes and heard his lilting voice. Be careful, Tegan. You are not a goddess, just her hands and feet for the little while you're in this world. Don't forget the web of magic. Power is never for free. Don't let my death be in vain. She felt Ton curl his cool fingers around hers, and she felt stronger. I promise, beloved, she answered. This fire has to burn itself out, but I will try and bring hope to the people who are left. Tegan held her breath as she remembered being too scared to dance in the funeral caves at home. Then she'd allowed herself to be delayed in Tara and arrived in Ismon too late to save her fellow druids. I mustn't hesitate again, she muttered through gritted teeth. If I don't act, then more will die. Boudica and Tegan. She arrives at Boudica's camp to become her battle druid, hoping that with Tegan at Boudica's side, that Boudica's revolt, which is just happening at the same time, will have the magic to support it, and she will crush the Roman rebellion. But Boudica and Tegan loathe each other. Also in her camp is a spellcaster, Elf, who offers Tegan a new, stronger magic. How does this work, she asked. Just imagine, and all will come true, Elf promised. How? He just smiled, strode across the square and disappeared into the crowd. Hot anger welled up in Tegan. Just imagine. What is this stupid man talking about? But Tegan finds that if she imagines hard enough, things do come true. She allowed herself the glow of pleasure. I can do this. I can save Britain. To keep the people together, I must speak as if it's the goddess. Sorry, I'll get this right in a minute. To keep the people together, I must still speak as if it's the goddess, but it's me that has the power. What shall I imagine next? Her foot kicked against something that rattled. It was a lost wooden doll. She set it up round in the ground. Stand, she commanded. It stood. Walk! It walked. Fall on your face before me. And it did. Tegan shuddered, suddenly afraid of what she could do. But she decides to take hold of this power and use it, and she makes a golem out of the blood, ash and mud and ruins of Camulodunum, Colchester, which Boudica has just sacked, and she commands the demon to inhabit this clay and ash and blood statue. A spirit like that can't ever be totally contained, she reasons, but it can be diminished and contained in this golem. Now at least I know where it is and what it's up to. There's an old saying, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer, and that's just what I'm doing. Only of course the containment doesn't work. The golem grows, allies with Boudica, and the attack on the Romans falls apart. The demon doesn't want a winner. It just wants agony and chaos. In despair, Tegan dreams on the White Hill of London, where the head of Bran the Blessed is buried. And Bran himself asks her what's wrong. She replies, if only I hadn't believed in the voice that told me to imagine. I should have known it was the demon, but it seemed so logical and simple. Too simple now I think about it. I wasn't listening to the web of magic. Bran listened with attention to every word, and at last he asked, what do you want from me? Huvel the Druid said my destiny wasn't to defeat the Romans, but something else, she replied. So, Gurgen replied, do you now understand? The Star Dancer's work is to prevent hatred and vengeance becoming the song and lifeblood. The Star Dancer's work is to prevent hatred and vengeance becoming the song and lifeblood of our country's future. I do. So how will you make that come to pass? Bran asked. I need to begin by destroying the golem, she said. I know the demon would have wormed its way into the rebellion with or without it. Boudica would have made sure of that, but the creature was a deadly mistake. I cannot control it. Bran smiled through his white beard. And what is the golem made of? Tegan shrugged. Ash. Mud, with some blood in it, rain, tears, and a framework of heather and withies. Then that is all it is, held together with intention and dreams, nothing more. You have nothing to fear. Take courage, Star Dancer. Your destiny is almost fulfilled. Then you shall have the hearth and home you long for. Remember, my head is buried here to protect Britain, and for a short while you are my hands and feet in the land, but respite is coming. March on with Boudica a little longer. Your little girl will be born somewhere safe, you have my word. May healing be our song, and reconciliation our lifeblood. So Tegan begins to weave an even stronger magic. She dismounted, strode over to the golem. Ash you were, ash you are, and ash you will be again, she intoned. The golem leaned forward and reached for Tegan. Searing heat and choking smoke made her eyes water, but without flinching, she took a deep breath and blew. Ash and cinders flew and span as the great charred knees crumbled. Move back! Run! People screamed. It's falling! And Tegan still blew. Hot embers spat and hissed past her ears. Smoke stung her eyes as the colossus staggered and fell. A sour wind rose. Swirling ashes curled up into the sky, and with a thundering roar, the golem sank and crumbled. Boudica's campaign falls apart. The Romans take control, and there is a sort of peace. Tegan, thinking everything is finished, goes back home where she has her baby, but she's struggling with fears of failure for the thousands who died, as well as the anger and grief over the loss of Ton and Griff. What's worse, Suetonius Paulinus, the governor of Britain, urged on by the demon, is still pursuing her. Tegan must flee again so her friends and family aren't wiped out. But then Tegan discovers a thorn tree that blooms in midwinter, and a wise, slightly different sort of druid who helps her understand Bran's words and heals her with the hope, strength, and wisdom to send the demon back into its bottomless cave in the last moments of the book. How? I'm going to tell you. So in summary, I've come round in a full circle about writing for magic. For me, however many demons, druids and dark magic you have, it's still a metaphor and psychology with a very gorgeous special effects. So why bother writing it? Someone once told me that the importance of fantasy writing is so you can take one step away from reality, find a lens to look back at life, then return to reality armed with creativity and ideas on how to tackle problems. I wrote these books some time ago while the invasion of Iraq was going on, and that helped build the story framework. But as I wrote these notes, I couldn't help thinking of the tragedy of Israel and Gaza. The untold damage, long-lasting hatred born of vengeance, is bearing hideous fruit on both sides. I won't be so prissy about writing magic next time. We, all of us, have got too much to tell the world through our stories. If politicians can't communicate hope and solution, we storytellers must. Any questions?
What do you actually mean by the word prissy when you talk about not being prissy about magic?
Oh, a bit sort of, oh, we can't touch magic, that's not real. It's, you know, a bit over-precious.
Okay.
Because I've got a background in psychology, I'm not a psychologist, but I've worked with psychologists. And that has been all my work. Everything has got to be accurate and scientific and demonstrable and all the rest of it. And so when you think that way and you think about magic, you think, yeah, that's pretty, but yeah, we've got to be real here, haven't we? So I was just growing up a bit. Oh, yes, Sarah, yeah?
Yeah, I think when you said prissy, I thought about a lot of the newer, say, pandemic writing, where magic is fluffy and nice and sparkly and has no consequences quite often. And I like the story so far, because it has consequences what you do, and as in Terry Pratchett and in other better books about magic, you pay a price for what you do, because it doesn't come from thin air.
Yeah.
I'm just imagining. And a lot, there's so many books out there at the moment with magic, and somebody just discovered that they can do magic, and but I don't want to learn, but hey, there's a danger. I know there's a danger out there, but I'm too lazy to learn. I don't want to learn, because somehow it will work itself out. That drives me crazy.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm open to be corrected, but as I understand Harry Potter magic, it's just if you get the words in the right order, if you put the right herbs in the cauldron, it will work. It's magic without responsibility.
Yes.
Magic is so important. As I said, it's the stepping back from reality. A friend of mine who's a clinical psychologist, as I say, I'm drowning in psychological people, she says the importance of writing isn't about being published, but she's dealt with a lot of kids who've been traumatized, and she encourages them to make up fantasy stories where they become empowered, they are the wizard who can zap the bad person away. Because she says, you know, because they can step back, they can imagine and they can start to take control in their imaginations, and then in reality she can help them look at the story and learn techniques to take control of the difficulty that's going on in their lives. So,
yeah,
Sarah.
I'm just saying, as you said, that after the second book they kind of said no, and you was like, live it.
Yeah.
Is the third book a particular favourite because you carried that on, where you could have said, oh, the story's finished, but you did carry it on and thing with? Or have you not got a favourite of the...
I haven't got a favourite. I mean, it's really all one story.
Yeah.
I
Again,
like...
as the thing is, and as you get the editor's guidance, the story must slightly change, or does that, as you stuck solid right from the start, what that story would be?
The story, I had a vague idea of what the story was. When I sold the idea to Macmillan, I'd written the first book and I'd got 3 A4 sheets just vaguely saying what was happening. And that's what they bought. Sorry, Sarah, I lost the thread of your question.
No, I'm just
Can
saying,
you nudge me?
It just said you was livid when you phoned me, but then I did the third book, and I thought, I bet you quite, yeah, I did
Yeah,
the third
I did quite like it.
Yeah.
A small Somerset publisher took the book up, and the guy that ran it encouraged me. And because I knew several writers, I paid them to do the editing for me, so I wasn't on my own on it. Excuse me. Terribly sorry, it's not the plague. I promise. So I don't really have a favourite. They all make me cry at the end. Some people have told me that they've never forgiven me for what happens to certain characters, but when you're writing, and having spoken to several of you, I know a lot of you enjoy writing, even if you aren't published writing, you're just doing it for the sheer joy of doing it. You'll know what it's like. The characters come alive in your head, and you might think you want Fred to do this, but Fred goes off and does his own thing. And then Felicity does their own thing. You know, and you think, what? You know, you haven't got that much control over your characters.
I was at somewhere where Terry Pratchett was talking, and he was complaining that I think it was Gaspo the dog, wasn't supposed to be in one of the books, and he'd been yapping around the table while Terry was typing.
Yeah.
So much that he had to put him in, I was just shut him up.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I've written some books for children about a talking cat called Fleabag, and I wrote it before I read Gaspo, but they're similarly bloody difficult. And some of you have cats, don't you, Vicky? And yeah, the characters do their own thing, especially if they're called Gaspo or Fleabag or whatever. But they're very determined characters. No more questions? Oh, just so you know, I did my research talking to archaeologists, the chief archaeologist of Norwich and of Colchester, and various other archaeologists and historians, and I had a friend who was a practicing Druid, but he was also an academic, and he knew that I needed to know the actual historical Druidry rather than, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but because it's different, rather than the modern Glastonbury Druid. As I say, I'm not putting the Glastonbury Druid down, but the historical Druid is a slightly different animal. And just to be clear, historically, if you were a Druid, you weren't expected to carry weapons or do any fighting. So yes, that is entirely historically inaccurate.
Is there a book about ancient Druids that you could say it's a good research book?
It's called The Druid Tradition by Philip Carr Gone.
Ah, thank you. I think I've
Sorry, can you say that again?
The Druid Tradition by Philip Carr Gone. If anyone actually has any questions, I'm easy to find on the internet. It's just Beth Webb, and I'm not the interior designer. I'm also not the reviewer of the famous film reviewer either.
Same questions I asked last night. Did the time you wanted to set it in come first, or did you have a story and then you decided when you were setting it?
Very, very interesting question. I have taught creative writing. Is my time running out, David?
No, you carry
I have taught creative writing for many, many years, especially with teenagers. And I live in Somerset, And I used to take busloads of children to a place called the Pete Moores Visitors Centre. It doesn't exist in the same format anymore. You know,
Quite sad, isn't it?
yeah.
You missed it.
And it's still sort of there. What's it called now? It's at Chatwick.
It's a Chatwick still, and I think it's called something like the West Hay Centre or something like that, or the Avalon Marshes Centre.
Avalon Marshes Centre, that's it, Chatwick in Somerset. But when I was writing this, it was a field which had got a bit of marsh, and an archaeologist had built 3 or 4 roundhouses, and there was a little bit of fire in there, which they stopped doing for health and safety. But they had hand-woven clothes, they had looms, they had tools. You could try using a quern, both a saddle quern and a rotary. So I used to take the kids here. Oh, and also across the marshes they had replica of the Sweet Track, which, for those of you who don't know, is a sort of path made out of hand-hewn planks and sticks to cross the marshes. And so I took the kids here, and I think the Sweet Track bit wasn't quite safe, but they could at least look at it. And they could try on Iron Age clothes, they could have a go at weaving, they could have a go at a quern, they could have a go with some tools. And I've always taught kids, well, and grown-ups when I teach, to daydream. When they're working on their thing, I say, you're trying too hard, go away and daydream. And I used to get them to sit quietly in these huts and play with the things and daydream. And I started daydreaming, and I found Tegan was starting to come alive. And I thought, well, which historical period? And I thought, well, after the Romans left, ordinary people did revert. Well, in fact, I don't think any ordinary people really abandoned, the ordinary farmers and people on the land still lived in quite a simple way. And I thought, well, Arthurian is a bit obvious and it has its difficulties. And I thought, well, really, I need to do the Roman invasion. And I thought, well, I hate Roman history. But I got out the books and I found it was absolutely fascinating. And I won't go down that path, I'll be here another hour. Any more questions? Is that on the table?
Yes, I have one. You've finished 4 books. Is that it finished, or are you going to carry on the series or do something else?
Well, these books were finished some time ago. I have books which I have written, but my agent was one of the problems for the problems with Macmillan. And as I say, a new publisher took these over, but then the new publisher went bust during COVID. And so I tried to get another agent again. And I had written some stories with some gender diverse characters, and I'd used sensitivity readers, and my agent said, you've got no right to write these, and she dumped me. So now I have no publisher and no agent, but I have lots of stories. So in answer to your question, I don't know. I'm finding self-publishing very, very difficult. But I have stories, and my latest one is about a Selkie boy, half Selkie, whose childhood sweetheart is acting very strange. And the half Selkie's father has gone back to the sea, thinking that the human mother is being controlling when she's not. She hides his skin just because she wants him to sit down and talk to her for once instead of just disappearing. And he says, you're typical human, you've just hidden my skin, and storms off to sea. And so the boy don't admit to the mother that he's grown skin, and he tries to persuade his sweetheart to sit and talk to him, but she won't, and things go from bad to worse. And when they do actually sit down and talk, this young person reveals that they're gender fluid, and they keep changing their skin. And the boy says, yeah, I get that. So it's a book about empathy, but again, it's using magic to say to people, listen, we all have changes, we all have difficulties. Just stop and listen to each other. Because this is what magic's for.
Thank you. I'm going to interrupt slightly, although you haven't
Finished,
got
I
time. Beth has agreed to be on the writer panel later on this afternoon, I hope. And I will then persuade you to self-publish, because I'm the master druid of self-publishing.
I have tried it, it's just too difficult.
I will disagree with you later on this afternoon. But everybody please thank Beth Webb for this lovely time.